In 1987, Sierra Online released a game that seemed, at first glance, like little more than a crude joke. Its hero was a balding, middle-aged man wearing a ridiculous white leisure suit, and his greatest ambition was to finally have some luck with women. Yet beneath the humor, the awkward protagonist and the deliberately tasteless premise was one of the most interesting adventure games of its era. Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards was not simply another Sierra adventure. It was a game built around embarrassment, failure, satire, and the strange idea that losing could actually be part of the fun. To understand Larry, it helps to understand Sierra Online and the adventure game culture of the 1980s. Sierra had already become one of the most important names in computer adventure games, creating worlds where players explored environments, solved puzzles, interacted with characters, and frequently discovered that doing the wrong thing could lead to spectacularly unfortunate consequences. King's Quest had established Sierra's fantasy adventure formula, while Space Quest had shown that the same structure could be used for science fiction comedy. Larry took that formula somewhere considerably more adult. The game was designed by Al Lowe, who had already worked at Sierra, and would become closely associated with the Larry series. Lowe understood that the concept could not succeed simply by making the game sexually suggestive. The real source of comedy had to be Larry himself. And Larry is intentionally pathetic. He is not a suave secret agent or a romantic hero. He is an insecure, outdated, socially awkward man who has somehow convinced himself that the world owes him a glamorous love life. That makes Larry less of a traditional hero and more of a walking punchline. The game's setting is equally important. Larry arrives in the fictional city of Lost Wages, a parody of Las Vegas and the adult entertainment culture surrounding it. The city is filled with casinos, bars, hotels, nightclubs, and questionable characters. It is a deliberately exaggerated playground where nearly every location exists to parody some aspect of nightlife and popular culture. The humor comes from the contrast between Larry's expectations and reality. He imagines himself as a sophisticated ladies' man, but the world constantly reminds him that he is neither sophisticated nor particularly successful. His attempts at romance frequently end in humiliation, disaster, or death. And death is one of the defining characteristics of Sierra's adventure games. In modern games, failure is usually designed to be convenient. You die, reload, and continue. In early Sierra adventures, failure could be part of the game's personality. You could make an absurd decision, walk into a dangerous situation, misunderstand a puzzle, or simply do something incredibly stupid. Larry would often die in a spectacularly comedic way. These deaths were not merely punishments. They were jokes. The game effectively turns experimentation into part of the entertainment. Players are encouraged to discover what happens when they make bad choices, because the consequences themselves can contain some of the funniest writing in the game. In that sense, Larry understands something that many modern games sometimes forget. Failure can be entertaining when the game reacts to it creatively. But there was another challenge facing Leisure Suit Larry. The game was deliberately aimed at adults at a time when computer games were still strongly associated with the children and teenagers. Sierra knew that this could create problems. The company therefore introduced an unusual age verification system at the beginning of the game. Players were asked questions about popular culture, history, and adult knowledge. The system was designed to prevent younger players from simply starting the game, but it quickly became part of the game's identity. Ironically, the age check became one of the things that made children even more curious about Larry. The game's adult content was also far less explicit than its reputation might suggest. Larry relies heavily on suggestion, innuendo, double meanings, and comedy. Visually, Larry is unmistakably a Sierra game of the late 1980s. The environments are constructed from relatively simple graphics, but the locations have enough personality to communicate the atmosphere. The city feels like a collection of stereotypical adult nightlife spaces, from casinos to bars and hotels. What makes the game memorable is not graphical realism. It is the writing. The dialogue is packed with jokes, cultural references, absurd situations, and deliberately uncomfortable encounters. Larry still has something that many technically superior games lack: personality. Leisure Suit Larry was never really about getting the girl. It was about the journey, the mistakes, the ridiculous situations, and the pleasure of discovering just how badly everything could go wrong.